For 12 years, Amina woke each morning beside the same man, in the same quiet house, in the same bed where dreams were once whispered like sacred vows. Their marriage had not been a storm of grand gestures, nor a dull echo of routine. It had been a slow, comforting rhythm, like the tide returning faithfully to the shore. Her husband, Idris, was a man of calm habits and gentle words. He kissed her forehead every morning, brought her tea the way she liked it, strong, no sugar, and asked about her day even when he was bone-tired. But something changed. Slowly, quietly, the smile she once wore so naturally began to fade. And the worst part? No one noticed. Not even him. It began with the small things. He no longer asked if she'd eaten. The tea became too strong. He didn't forget her birthday, but he no longer looked her in the eyes when saying, "I love you." Amina told herself it was the weight of work, the passing of years, the familiar silence that settles into all marriages eventually. But somewhere inside, a whisper began, a doubt so quiet, it only grew louder with her denial. She watched Idris from across the dinner table, analyzing the way he avoided eye contact, how he checked his phone a second too long when it buzzed late at night. He didn't lie. But he no longer reached for her hand under the covers, and that truth pierced deeper than any betrayal ever could. She never confronted him, not with anger, not with accusation. Instead, she turned inward. She began journaling again, something she hadn't done since before their wedding. In the quiet hours when the world slept and Idris snored softly beside her, Amina filled pages with questions. When did he stop seeing me? Was I too safe? Too predictable? Too present? She feared that she had become furniture, important, familiar, necessary, but invisible. But doubt, Amina learned, is not always born of betrayal. Sometimes it's born of absence, the slow erosion of attention, of affection, of presence. She began revisiting old memories like a woman walking barefoot through broken glass. She found the letters he used to write her before they married, hidden in an old showbox beneath the bed. His handwriting had once been urgent, poetic, full of longing. "Your laugh saves me from myself," he had written once. And now? That laugh barely escaped her lips anymore. One day, while Idris was at work, Amina visited the little coastal town where they had spent their first anniversary. It was a quiet escape, a place where they had danced barefoot in the sand and eaten fish and chips on a cold bench. As she sat in the same spot a decade later, the sea still roaring with secrets, she pulled out one of the letters and read it aloud to herself. An elderly couple walked past and smiled warmly. They reminded her of what she thought they'd become. She spent hours there, speaking softly to the wind, as though it might carry her confusion to someone who could answer. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, her heart had decided something. If Idris no longer loved her, she would not beg. But she needed to know. She needed clarity, not for anger's sake, but for her own peace. That night, she returned home to a quiet house and an empty living room. Idris was late. Again. She reheated dinner but left her plate untouched. When he finally walked through the door, he looked surprised to see her sitting there, fully dressed, eyes steady. "I went to Westbourne today," she said calmly. He paused mid-step, confused. That's where we went years ago, right?
She nodded.
Where you told me I was your heart's favorite sound. He smiled faintly, almost guiltily. I remember.
Amina took a breath.
Idris, is there someone else? His eyes widened, and for a moment, silence choked the room. But then he exhaled, slowly, as though he'd been holding something in for far too long.
No, he said.
There's no one else. She searched his face for cracks, signs of dishonesty, but saw only tiredness. Not of her, but of everything. He sat beside her, running his hand through his hair. I don't know when I became distant, he confessed.
It wasn't a decision. It just happened. Work's been consuming. I thought I was holding everything together.
I didn't realize I was letting you go piece by piece. Amina's voice trembled, not with rage, but with the weight of hope. Then why did I feel like a stranger in my own marriage? He looked at her, really looked at her for the first time in months.
Because I stopped showing up.
I stopped choosing you.
Her eyes welled up. I never asked for much. Just to be seen.
To matter. Idris reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. I've been carrying this with me for weeks, he said. I wrote it, but couldn't bring myself to give it to you. She opened it.
It wasn't a letter. It was a list. Things I miss about Amina.
The way she sings under her breath when watering plants. Her awful jokes that make no one laugh but me.
How she wraps her shawl twice when she's upset. The smell of her hair after rain.
The way she used to look at me like I was home. I forgot how to show love, he said quietly. But I never stopped feeling it. Amina, silent, folded the note carefully and placed it on the table.
She didn't forgive him with words. Instead, she stood and reached for his hand.
He rose too, slowly, unsure.
She guided his hand to her cheek.
You forgot how to show it, she whispered. Now you must learn again.
The following weeks were not magical.
There were no grand gestures or sweeping apologies. But there were changes, small, sincere, deliberate.
Idris began leaving notes in her books again.
He cooked breakfast, even when it was badly done. They took evening walks, at first quiet, then gradually filled with laughter. Amina didn't smile immediately, but slowly, steadily, it returned, like sunlight breaking through a long, gray winter. She still wrote in her journal,
but the questions changed.
Now she wrote things like, today he made me tea with just the right strength.
Or he asked about my painting today. Really asked. She wasn't naive. She knew love could fade if left in the shadows.
But now she also knew it could be rekindled, if two people were brave enough to admit the flame had dimmed. Months later, they returned to Westbourne, not to recover the past, but to honor it.
They sat on the same bench where once she read old letters alone.
This time, she leaned into him, his arm around her, and her smile not forced but real. As the sun set, Idris whispered, Do you forgive me? Amina turned to him with soft eyes. Forgiveness isn't something I gave. It's something we built together. And in that moment, the smile that had once disappeared returned, not just to her lips, but to her spirit. If this story touched your heart, like, share, and subscribe to our channel. More unforgettable love stories await you every day.